Hope I recording is in progress now. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Porter. I um, I run a company called Porter Productions LLC, which is based in both Massachusetts and Washington State. And the reason why I'm all, those two places, because I work on stuff on both coasts. As some of you know, I program the Town and the City Festival in Lowell, which we just celebrated our sixth one. And then I also work on a few other projects occasionally in the Boston area. Out on the West Coast, I program a festival called Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, which happens at Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. It's a very large festival. It's been going on for now. This is the 25th year for it, and seventh year I'll have worked on it. My company also does the booking management for a venue called Sweetwater Music Hall, which is also in the Bay Area. On and off, I've worked on the Bumbershoot Festival in Seattle over the years. That's kind of how I ended up on the West Coast, working on that festival for many years. So I'm not currently working on that, but there's some other things in the Seattle area I work on. So lots on my plate. And this is obviously about approaching talent buyers, which I am one. And I'm going to go over kind of an overview of that world as much as I can, but I'm hoping this will be very conversational. I want to be available depending on the time allotted for any questions and thoughts that you guys have. So hopefully it's not just me throwing stuff at you, but I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you over the next, I don't know, 25 minutes or so, whatever it works out to. So I'm just curious though, just because this may help me steer in one way or the other, and you don't feel forced to speak, but I'm just kind of getting a vibe. Are most of you musicians who represent yourselves? I'm just wondering, is any, and you can put this in the chat, and if you don't want to, yeah, the thumbs up, and that's helpful. Thank you. I'm assuming most of you are, but is anybody here a representative of an artist? Like you're not pitching yourself, you're pitching someone else, me, Simran. Okay, great. Okay. That's just good to know, who's more in the businessy. You're up a DJ, right on. Okay, great. So okay, that's just helpful for me to know, I may tailor this slightly one way or the other, but it's all pretty much hopefully info that you'll all find helpful. So, talent buyer, what does a talent buyer do? And are they the same as a lot of other terms? Like maybe you've all heard the terms, talent buyer, booker for venues, sometimes for festivals and special events. They might call them festival programmers, programming directors, artistic directors, booking managers, etc. It's all pretty much the same gig. But just one thing for as far as glossary terms are concerned, we are not booking agents. Booking agents are the reps of the artists who we deal with all the time. They're pitching the artists. Also, sometimes artist managers are doing that as well. I just say that because it's not so much of these days, but I remember years ago there'd be some confusion because some people who are laymen to this and would say I'm a booking agent. No, that's another job. So I'm just getting that out since we're talking specifically about talent buyers. Managers, of course, are a little different than agents. They're kind of all encompassing, but I deal with a lot of managers too, as they sometimes out of necessity have to book the artists that they're representing. So talent buyers, of course, we're procuring performers for an event, whether it be a multi-act festival, a special event, and special events meaning like a fundraiser or a private event, something kind of unusual. Or, they could be, just for a night at a venue being a club, theater, arena, amphitheater, et cetera. Any place or situation in which people can gather to experience one or more performances. Often, those events and gatherings are ones that one needs to buy a ticket in order to gain entry, unless you're, of course, lucky enough to get on the guest list. But still, somebody's buying a ticket there, so that's what a big part of it is. And because of that need to sell tickets, the buyers have a need to book acts that'll attract other human beings with money to spend to buy tickets to come to see them, or also in the case of bars, also buying drinks because that's what they're there for. They're not necessarily entertainment is a sort of sub goal of theirs. It's about selling drinks. The exception of those, what I just said, is maybe free events that are paid for by sponsors or donors. But don't be fooled by that term free because it's costing someone or some entity something, and they want as many people to show up that can fit in safely and comfortably in that space that they can have. So there's still this need that's thrown on the talent buyer to get people here. Often I say, people will say, we're in the music business, and we sort of are, but really we're in the people gathering business more than anything. So what we're doing is constantly fielding pitches by agents or managers or the artists themselves, in your cases and many others. And, we're getting approached all the time, constantly, for acts to be booked for a future show. Sometimes we're doing our own outreach to artists, of course, in order to book them, bands that we like, we think will fit with a certain bill or festival or event that we're doing. And also, typically, not always, but typically, of course, we know that artists will draw some sort of a crowd, whether it be 30 people or 3,000 people or more in some cases. So that's always a consideration. We're also constant negotiators. There's a number of hats we're wearing here, right? We're negotiating the financial deal and compensation for the performance. If it's a successful venue or festival, that likely means the talent buyer for that entity is being absolutely bombarded with inquiries and requests to perform at whatever it is, whether the festival or the venue. Sometimes I mean, honestly, it feels to us like there are more bands and performers than people who listen to them. That's how overwhelmed we get. But and sometimes that overwhelming situation can mean it's almost physically impossible for a talent buyer to respond to all inquiries. We wouldn't get all of our work done if we did. We try our best. Or some are way better than others. I try my best, and most of my colleagues do. But I know there are others out there, some peers that, if they don't want to deal with you, they don't. So, and I can understand the situation, although it's a little unfortunate. But that's just something that's on the talent buyer's plate often. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Like for a pitch that I would get for a venue. Obviously that's, looking for something in a few months in advance or weeks or months in advance. Often it's touring acts that we're dealing with. So they're looking at a very specific time frame. I'll hear from, XYZ, person from whatever agency. And they're looking, okay, I'm getting inquiries now. Hey, so-and-so is looking for dates in the last 2 weeks of September. Do you have any avails? And I'm looking on my calendar, seeing what's available, seeing what makes sense for that artist, because are they somebody that I feel, first off, I have to say, is that someone I think can headline my 300 capacity room? And if I do, then I'm like, okay, we put holds on it and on the dates, and we see from there moving forward. And then I end up sometimes making an offer, which I'll get to in a sec. But yeah, that's kind of the typical pitch with the venue. Now for a festival, sort of similar. I mean, obviously the festival isn't going on all throughout the year. It's a specific weekend or week, and those artists or agents know that, and so they reach out to us much earlier because we're booking so far in advance. That can be anywhere from, you know, uh, 6 months in advance to a year and a half in advance, depending on what festival we're talking about and what sort of ambition level it's at. The bigger, typically, the earlier they do. So, and where I'm looking at with the festival, I'm fortunate that Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, Bumbershoot, the Town and the City Festival, and some other events that I've worked on are very eclectic. That's fun for me. I have I have a lot of experience in a lot of different genres and styles, and love them all. And so I get to kind of sort of paint a picture. I approach booking festivals as an art. So hence Hardly Strictly Bluegrass calls me music curator, which I love because I am essentially curating. Now I'm still having to worry about those things that I was mentioning about the venues, is like how many people are going to come into this room? Are we going to sell tickets, or are we at least or if it's a free event, are we going to have still a good amount of people there that all the sponsors or whatever entity is putting it on is going to be happy about it? So there's still that pressure. But with the festival, there are a lot more nuances and everything. Venues are all about filling the calendar, and often, how did the bar do? With festivals, that element is there, but it's also putting things together in a flow, working it out in a production standpoint. Is this artist work well on a stage from a production standpoint? Are they eight-piece band and this is a tiny stage? That doesn't work. Or are they a solo artist, but it's this massive stage with massive audience area and they're just going to get ignored there? And that's not good too. So there's a sort of a lot of nuances, a little artistry, and a lot of other considerations a festival booking person has to put in. So, so like I said, all those are our motivations. People gathering. Music's the driver, the conduit of bringing people together, and much like TV entertainment or music on the radio is the driver for people to listen to commercials and on commercial radio. It's sort of a similar sort of thing. The one thing though is I think the best talent buyers have sort of a sixth sense, and these are the ones that last in the business. A lot of the ones that don't have the right temperament for this gig don't usually last very long. But the ones that you hear about who've been into it a long time, usually they do love music. They do have an affinity for it. Maybe they were former musicians in a lot of cases, or they've worked in different realms in the music industry. I had a record label. I've been an artist manager. I was in a band for a short time. Worked in music retail. I've had my hands in kind of everything except for publishing, which I still don't get. But anyway, I've had my hands somewhere in there, and that actually has kind of helped me, I think, do the job that I've been doing for 30 plus years. But I think the best ones have a sixth sense of what'll work out best for all, and they do truly love music and live performance. So most buyers are sympathetic to what musicians go through. And in many cases they've been on that side, but not all feel that way. And I just, mention that because I'm sure you've all had to deal with the gruff talent buyer or the one who's kind of aloof, or, don't assume they're going to dig your music. Don't assume that they care. Could be somebody who's burnt out on their job, and somebody who ended up with a job because they're the venue's general manager or they're the bartender and no one else wanted to do the gig. I mean, people end up in that gig for all sorts of ways and reasons, but most do love it. But that said, whether you're going through someone who's difficult, this is just in anything in life, right? Whether it's someone who's very communicative and seems nice and pleasant to someone who's not, you need to show as much professionalism as you can, and you maybe even be throw some humble in it to some degree too. You're asking them to take time out of their very busy schedule to give you consideration for a booking and to hopefully give you a gig and pay you to play. So you're essentially, they're being the buyer, you're being the seller, you're being the pitch person. So selling your performance or your client's skill and music to the buyer with hopes that from both of you that people will show up to that future show. So together you're putting together an event. You have to look at it that way. It's just not just some little gig, whatever, and we're just filling in some time and having fun playing in front of 10 people. You really, the most successful artists who really thrive in the live performance sphere really look at it that way, like they're putting together a special event every time. And like I said, maybe an arguable exception of that if you're an instrumentalist, like you're a piano playing singer or something similar, and you're hired to play some music at a bar or a lounge where music is sort of added more for atmosphere. It's not the main attraction for the place. That's maybe an exception, but you're still having to pitch yourself even for something like that if you're into that sort of thing. So that's something to keep in mind. Also keep in mind, I think it's really great when we can relate to each other. Like I mentioned earlier, I've worked in different realms in the music industry, and it's helped kind of inform me or have a little bit of understanding, even compassion at times of what the record company people are doing, the promotion people are dealing with, the artist managers, the agents. I tend to get along with them all because I've been in a lot of those shoes. And so I think also live performing musicians have to understand the economics of venues and the economics of festivals. There's just an incredible high financial overhead and expenses for all of them, staffing, insurance, business taxes, rent or property taxes if they don't own their, rent, obviously, if they don't own their building, supplies, et cetera. It's just, it feels, overwhelming in that sense for a lot of venue owners, and the profit margins can be very slim. Festivals have similar expenses, but there are more moving parts, and usually those expenses are mentioned. I mentioned for venues are even higher for festivals because they can't amortize their expenses throughout the year. It's just one weekend or just one week, so it's just like they built up this huge thing, this huge, massive rocket ship. As like we're launching the rocket ship, and it costs a lot to have it to exist at all. So, so that's something to consider. I mean, that's a big reason why festivals have a lot of sponsors and donors and that sort of thing, grants if it's a nonprofit. But that can be tricky at times in that festivals, sometimes if they're getting grants for specific genres or music or something, that could, sometimes there are some state grants or national grants for specific kind of programming, which may help you, but sometimes they're very esoteric kind of things. Like one time, many years ago at Bumbershoot, we got a nice grant for to book some South Asian artists. And great, we wanted to, but that meant I couldn't book some other kind of genres. You can't book everybody, but that sometimes plays into it because they have something that dictates why they're getting that funding. Also with sponsors. Sponsors are sponsoring so that they get a lot of people in front of whatever their brand is, whether it's a name or throwing out, little tchotchkes to the people or some drink or whatever. They want a lot of people around. So if there aren't, usually the sponsor doesn't re-up and come back the next year to work on it. So there is that little monkey on our back too about pleasing the sponsors to some place. They don't usually dictate exactly what the talent buyer or program is going to do, but again, that's just sort of an added pressure of why we're people gatherers and we're needing to bring out as many people as we can. So, because the reality is, if venues or festivals, but venues in particular, if they continue to book shows and they don't draw the numbers that can sustain their business, they go out of business. I'm sure we all know and seen and can think of a bunch of them that have gone away, and for varying reasons. But usually it all gets down to money and being able to continue taking care of all the expenses and being a sustainable business. And then when that happens, when they close, everybody's out of luck. No venue to employ people and be a great gathering space, no place for performers to express and share their music to the public and hopefully grow their audience. So sometimes there can understandably be disdain for some venue owners and talent buyers because the perception is that they can be standoffish and keep too much of the money from the show income. Sometimes if you have in some cases, for instance, if you're doing a door deal where it's a percentage of the income, you're not getting a guarantee. You might be like, gee, we're $1,000 off the top to go to these expenses, but that's unfortunately the only way those venues can move forward is to make sure that because they have these expenses, whether it's sound people or staffing or whatever, and it doesn't happen unless they take care of that kind of expense. So it's just plain old expensive, and I'm sure if they could bring the cost down, they would. I'm sure there are greedy venues out there, but the vast majority are not getting very wealthy in this business, with maybe the exception of the corporately owned venues but they do, though, only because they own such a large volume of venues, and usually large venues where we have bigger overhead, but you have a lot more room to make money. So, and also there's a pretty big burnout rate for people in this industry too, like restaurants. If any of you work in the restaurant or, service industry, it takes an enormous amount of effort, time, energy, tenacity, savviness, and some good luck to thrive. So there's some overlap on all of that. So just something to keep in mind if you're wondering, why is this club closing, or what's going on with this talent buyer? There could be all kinds of drama in the background. So the other thing I wanted to mention is just about selling and pitching yourself the best way possible. You know, positives and negatives and how good ways of doing it and bad ways of doing it. I mean, I think if you show that you are savvy and consistent doing promotion, and I mean, social media, email blast, postering, whatever, venues need, that's going to impress a venue. Venues also, at the same time, need to have savviness and consistency too. Some venues don't do enough, in my opinion. But bands shouldn't let that keep you from having a successful show. Sometimes I think the best shows happen when it's a partnership between the venue, their promotion person or the talent buyer and the band, and they're all working together. That's really when it comes through. But sometimes you're going to be in a situation where you're working with a club and they just throw up some little thing on Instagram and that's it, and they don't do any little promo, if that, or maybe a piece of paper in the window, and that's all they do. Okay, that sucks, but don't let that thwart you from building the most successful show you can. When you're pitching yourself, just simply sending links to tracks on your Spotify page doesn't really cut it. We really need to know how actively you perform live, like where else have you played. You need to have a sense of the type of venues you performed in and what kind of audience draw you'll potentially have. Like I said, talent buyers, in a way, we're being gamblers. We're looking at indicators in order to make smart bets that a show will draw an adequate amount of people, again, so we can stay in business. If you have little or no history of playing in a venue, that's okay. Just need to be honest about that and assure that, you're worthy enough for, hopefully then the music speaks to somebody. You show some care with your communication with the talent buyer, which I'll get to in a second. They'll give you that first show. Everybody has to have a first show somewhere along the line. If you have some background with some other bands you played for, you have a little bit of head start. But if you're brand new and they don't know of you, well, they're always booking newer artists and everything. Then we just have to have that gut feeling that, okay, maybe it's worth a try. The music sounds good. They seem professional. They're being communicative. All right, let's give them a chance as an opener on this particular gig. That'll happen, or even in the festival context, that can happen. But just know that, just if it's your first time, just assure them you'll get, maybe 20, 30 people out, and maybe it means playing for free for the first 2 or 3 times you're out there. But it's just getting exposure and getting yourself out there, improving yourself. That's just the reality that what you have to do. As far as, emailing people, make sure it's not super long. Just say, hello, I'm so-and-so from XYZ band. We've been playing in the Lowell area for about a year or so and working hard to promote ourselves and grow our audience. We've heard great things about your venue or festival. We would be honored to play and perform there someday. Here's our bio and list of recent shows we played. Here's some upcoming ones. We'd invite you to check it out. And then here's some of our recorded music or videos or more info at our website, and throw some links in. That's kind of all you really need to do. If you do share videos, though, I will give you an example of maybe the worst. I've been doing this for a number of decades, and this may have been the worst pitch I had ever received ever, and kind of recently. Somebody wanted to play Sweetwater Music Hall, which is a 300 capacity room. He sends me this email, doesn't even say the name of his band, says, but they packed out this place, Perry's, which is in the next town over. And, we'll pack it up, I'm sure we'll pack your place too, and everything. And he sends me this link of the video of one of their show. And they're at Perry's with about 12 people in front of them. So it was the most sloppy communication I'd ever seen in a while, and I was like, I don't know if he just smoked too much pot before he pressed send or what went on with the man, but don't do it. If you have a video, make sure there are people in front of you. If you want to do a video of like a rehearsal or something that's a little more staged, okay, fine. But saying you're gonna pack my place out and send a low quality video with 12 people, skip the video entirely and just give me your recorded product. So something to keep in mind. It's staggered my mind to see that, but just put yourself a little bit in the talent buyer's shoes. Let's say you've got your own venue or your own thing or party or something you're throwing in, and what would you want to get? What would convince you to book yourself? think of it that way. And again, it's just like pitching yourself for anything, for a job. You essentially are. You are looking for, like, granted, it's a temporary job, it's a one-night job, but yeah, that's how you have to really approach it. Also, keep in mind about time frame. Sometimes I get people inquiring about something. Do you have any gigs what are we in May 13 now? Do you have anything available in late June? That was long ago. Like right now, I'm kind of finishing up 2026 booking right now. I'm starting to look at January and February. That's not every venue. Some are, and you have to kind of inquire about that. But I think when you're pitching yourself to a venue, figure it's going to be anywhere from 3 to 8 months in advance. Performing arts centers and theaters and festivals or anything, kind of on a higher level, that they can get booked up even further ahead. So don't feel like you're reaching out too early. And if you are, they'll tell you, hey, get back to me in a couple months. That's fine, but better to be early than late. So that's something also to keep in mind. So, if you're looking for any shows right now, you're looking at probably late fall, winter, maybe even into 2026. Um, so that's I think that's it. I think, I kind of add also, if you want to, another thoughts on the festivals. If you're pitching yourself to any festivals, first make sure that you're reaching out to the right ones. That may seem like an obvious thing, but I just get a lot of examples of people who just, get a big list of festivals and they just shotgun all of their send out a ton of emails to all of these festivals without really knowing what that festival's about, or what other kinds of bands that were happening, or if they're even comparable to anything there. You want to see, who's booking your style and genre of music, who's booking the level of bands that you're at, like so club level bands, for instance. Are they booking that? And is it something you think you see some comparable acts that they're comparable to what the music you make? They've been playing there in recent years. Okay, you can envision yourself playing at that one. That's something to keep in mind, because I don't want you to waste your time and the talent buyer's time by sending out, and so you're just not right for it, for whether it be because of genre or size or whatever. So do some research. We got a little thing called Google, right, and other web browsers, and we can kind of see all of that. And there are a lot out there. There might be a lot out there that aren't on your radar. I often sometimes say, looking at other bands that or artists that you feel, a kinship with musically, or comparable as far as how long you've been playing and what sort of draw. See what's on their itinerary. Catch what else is going on with where they're getting booked, whether festivals or other venues, and that way you can get a lot of ideas that way. Um, so yeah, so that's it in a nutshell. Um, yeah. Any questions or thoughts, or what else, how can I help you guys? Anything beyond that I've said?
Hi, Chris. I have a question relating
Yes.
to the last thing you said about researching the genres. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So, just giving an example of the DJ I represent. So she does Amapiano and Afro House. There are a lot of Afro House is getting a lot of popularity right now, but even the centers that play Afro House music, they don't know what Amapiano is. Amapiano is a South African um, music genre, beats a lot of beats, uh, and it's frequently mixed with uh, you know. Anyways, so since this is such a novel genre in Boston, in the Boston area, what would you recommend we approach uh, pitching?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, something unique. I mean, but I mean, it's dance music, right? I mean, it's something that's really upbeat, and
Yes,
and it
yes,
seems that
exactly.
it's a genre which I have limited experience with, but I know what you're talking about. I think it's.
Yes,
I think you could be a crossover with sort of an event that's doing a lot of world global music, but at the same time something that's more of an electronic dance music crowd. Correct?
got it. Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, there's lots of them out there. I don't know how many venues are in the area that would be open to that, but certainly, you know, there's no shortage around North America as far as um of other you know, I think of events that would be into that music. I think one thing that's sometimes helpful is reaching out. I mean, there are are you acquainted with or connected with other artists around the country that are doing this music? The re-
So right now, no, but we're focusing on collaborating with, for example, uh, some other cultural DJs who do their own sort of house music, and we're sort of focusing on collaborating with
Great,
novel,
great.
different, yeah.
That's no, that's great. Yeah, you're kind of touching on what I was going to suggest. So you're already kind of doing that. I was going to say like trying to network with others that, and they don't have to be exactly in the genre, but just anything that's, you know, I mean, there's a lot, you know, this as far as you know the DJ world, there's probably you know countless other DJs who would be maybe comparable or complement, maybe not comparable, complementary to the music of of your artist, and working with them about trying to put either some events together, or you know, do they need some more DJs at some festival or venue that they're doing, you know, trying to network with others. I often say that for even this is even for you know rock bands or singer songwriters. You know, sometimes you know they know where to play in their own backyard, but they want to play somewhere like you know, say play in Maine or Vermont or whatever. And I'm always like, reach out to some other bands, try to open up for them, and then you know do the reciprocal thing back in Massachusetts and have them open up on a show. So with the DJ world, I think you know it's sort of similar, you know, finding that out. But I think to the it's advantageous that you know, the whole genre as far as you know other African music and other vibes, you know, that sometimes there are artists that are touring. It's a big band and they need to have an opener, but because of production reasons, it doesn't make sense to have another band. Sometimes a DJ or something small setup is much easier. So that's another angle to go to kind of, you know, research and find other artists that is. But I think what you're in the situation, besides just pitching to the venues, pitch to other artists that you feel that could be complementary to the music that you're doing. And also just research a lot of festivals out there. I think I can't think of any right off the top of my head, unfortunately, but I'm just thinking that there are quite a few out there that would
Yes.
something to that kind of music.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Thanks for the question. Any other questions or thoughts or anything, points you want me to underline or?
Yeah, I put a question in the chat, but
Oh, okay. Hey,
I'm,
Perry. Yeah. Oh, I missed it here. Yeah, I didn't hit the chat thing. How often should an artist band follow up on a booking before it becomes harassment? Great question. That is one. I'm surprised I didn't bring that up. I'm glad you brought it up because that is something that comes up. You know, it's like you don't want to be. Yeah, and it's a fine line, and whoever you're reaching out to has a different line. You know, for me, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty easygoing if you checked in with. I'm usually try to be specific with, and I think again, the better buyers will do this. It's like, okay, Perry, I don't have anything for you right now. Might have a better idea, you know, in June. Might, you know, maybe in like 3, 4 weeks, check back with me. But they don't always do that. You know, it's like I don't know, check, call back later or whatever. They'll be maybe a little more vague about it. I, in my opinion, I think, you know, like a once a month thing is fine. That might feel like too much time. I know, but there's just so many, you know, the two things are happening. One is, yeah, you were getting bombarded and harassed by some, and that can be a turn off. But then there are some others that, you know, check in once and, you know, then I don't hear from them again in 6, 7 months and they lost opportunity to maybe, you know, get something, you know. I'm like, what was that band that called me up that does, you know, it's got the tuba in them and you know, and the tuba and flute player, and oh, I can't remember who they are now. I can't find it in my emails, you know. So, you know, I'm making that up, but you just say, you know, I sometimes quirky things can come up like that where I'll need that person, and so waiting 6 months is too long. So I think once a month, unless you hear back from them, is fair. Again, unless it's, I think it depends on who you're pitching to, though. If it's more of like a bar, like a really small place, like something that's like, maybe 150 cap, where, uh, I don't know exactly, Thirsty First or Warp and Weft or some of the tiny places in Lowell or Deep Cuts in Medford, maybe they, checking in with them every 2 weeks maybe makes more sense. So that's a thing. The nice thing is we have emails now, so it's a little less harassing. I mean, back in the I've been doing this long enough. I remember when there were phone calls and just, hearing that person's voice who would call up every single, week. It's like, oh no. So emails, we can kind of set them aside, right? And not be bothered. So when people are saying they're getting harassed by email, I'm like, come on, it's not that bad. But you're right, but it's weird, you kind of have to it's a weird little nuance. So, yeah.
Would you
So
say it's better, would you say, Chris, it's better to contact if you get someone's cell phone number or email? What do
email
people, email is better. Okay.
initially, I think once you build a rapport with that person and they've got the number or whatever, then a text or a call can be okay. But I think, even though in certain realms of life, texting has taken over emailing, but in this world, in my opinion, and I think most would agree, email is still king. And the phone calls, you leave the phone call more if like once you get the gig or once you think you're close to it, or if they've been really holding you up for a long time. It's like, I think I got this gig for you, check it back with me, and then you don't hear for a while, and you have to be true to yourself. You've got a schedule and you want to make sure that you're taking care of your calendar and all. And so sometimes somebody's not blowing you off on purpose. They're having to, they're dealing with other fires at their venue and trying to fix it and stuff. So, but I'd wait till you've kind of built up a little bit of rapport. Maybe it's a venue you've already played at once. They got to know you a little bit. You feel like there's a good vibe there. Then maybe the calls or text can be, but initially email.
That makes sense to me. I wouldn't want to get a bunch of texts from people looking for gigs.
Right. Yeah. No. And fortunately, I don't. It's rare that I do. If I do, again, it's probably with an agent, a booking agent, but with an agency. But I have a rapport with them, so I know them, and I could tell them, stop texting me, you asshole. No, I won't say that. But I feel like they can do that. But again, it's something you get to know them. You guys are pitching yourselves kind of early on. You're early on in your career. You're not, don't have that big cloud. I mean, you got to be careful to be polite and easy. It's a great question you brought up, because there could be some that are like that are look at it as harassment. But again, that kind of goes back to something I was saying way earlier. I think that those are the people that don't have the temperament for the business, and they're not going to last too much longer in it. So,
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
yeah, you
Um,
bet.
Chris, there is a question in the chat. I don't know if you can see.
Okay, there's from Nita. Yeah. Is there any paperwork artists need to provide for bookings, or is this something the venue or festival provides? I mean, like a contract, I'm assuming you mean, Nita, like once you get the gig?
Yes.
Okay, great question. So typically venues don't do that. Festivals will. Venues, it's really, when again, some are more professional than others. So with me or any of the bigger kind of established ones, they'll usually send you an offer sheet, which can kind of act as a contract per se. It'll show, here's how much you're getting, or what the compensation deal is, the date, the times, that sort of thing. It's sort of like a letter of agreement kind of thing. And that's something I would send out to an artist. And sometimes it's for smaller venues, it's more about maybe just an email, but it just kind of lays that down. And so in that case, that's usually good enough for the venue. If you have a concern if it's a venue you're not familiar with, or then don't have much rapport with, or even if you do, I think it's always a good idea to have some little. It can be something very simple, just a one-page thing of just the facts. Like I said, the date, set time, what time should you arrive, who the contacts are, the band contacts, who's the production contact or the sound person or whatever at the venue, any other details, how long to play, the set length, that sort of thing, and sort of make your own contract for that. Typically, artists or artist representatives, so the agents or the managers have that. Sometimes it's just a handshake deal, though. Like I said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It kind of depends on what level of a place. If this is just sort of a simple tiny bar you're playing in, it usually doesn't matter as much. But something is a good idea. Now, festivals, they same thing. Typically, the artist will have will generate the contract, but in some cases, in a lot of cases, the festivals will, or if it's a local band that doesn't have sort of a contract set up, they'll make one. Like we did with the Town and the City Festival, we had like a very simple sheet that just kind of gave some very basic stuff, just so we had everything kind of in writing, so to speak. Although everything's digital PDFs now, so but you know what I mean. So it just sort of ask, I guess. But like I said, if you're playing a festival and it's like, should I generate a contract or do you have something? And then that'll probably answer that. Did I get everybody else? There's this whole chat thing. I didn't see it all. Okay, it looks like yeah.
I'll jump in with one. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Santa.
One thing I struggle with, and I play a number of bands and have for a while, but like when I get to the gig, I have a really hard time figuring out what my draw actually was. So I want to be truthful when I'm reaching out to talent buyers about like what I think I can do, and I feel like I'm always just pulling a number from the dark. So I'm wondering if you have tips on like accurately gauging that while you're at a gig, tips on increasing your draw, or like how does the booker guess the draw if the artist doesn't like disclose what they think it is?
Well, again, depending on the venue, if it's a free admission thing, so I know you play like a Warp and Weft. Who knows? I don't know. I think we all try to get a gauge on it. I mean, I'm constantly doing that. I've been doing this so long. It's like I drive friends of mine crazy when I'm at a room and I'm like, oh, it's like 200 people in here, and like who cares, Chris, But I did this. I'm just always looking at it, and I just have my own little visual way to do it. I think so. The question, though, I think is if you had an approximation. I mean, if you wanted to be really like, okay, this, really accurate, have a friend with a clicker and whatever, and just here, okay, we had 115 people that came in. If you really wanted, if it's a non-ticketed thing, if it is a ticketed thing, like if you're playing, say, Sinclair or Brighton Music Hall or something, they're going to have that info, obviously ticketed, and they're going to know how many comps are in. So you can just ask for that info. But if it's someplace that's a little less formal, like some of the smaller places around Lowell, for instance, it's an approximation,
Are you counting like the draw as like the number of heads in the room? Because like maybe somebody went to Warp just to get a beer and then they happened to be there for their music, but there were 55 people in the room. Am I saying 55?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, it's I think that's fine. Well, here's the thing: you didn't clear the room, right? You weren't you weren't in the band, the fabulous room clearers. They're always a pain to book, right?
Try not to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kept them there. So
Yeah.
you could say that. I mean, it's just it's an approximation. It's not down to a perfect science. If I were your representative, I'd say, yeah, it's better to have 55 people. Yeah, but what about did you count the guy with the beer and his dog? Sure, whatever. It's like,
Okay, cool.
yeah, I think that's fair. Or what I would do actually in that case, we had 40 to 60 people at Warp and Weft the other day, something like that. I think that means you have a approximation. That's probably the most honest way to put it. But
Yeah.
But I appreciate your honesty and wanting to be precise and honest. But
I think I usually undershoot though. So it's good to hear you say like I could count like the number of heads in the room at the fullest when we're playing. Like that's what we drew.
I'd guarantee you most people do. You're being too polite. Yeah, most do. I'm sure they were like, oh, we had 100 people, and I'm like, well, they were there for sort of for the other band, but okay. You
Right.
know, so God bless you for not being that kind of person, but
Yeah.
you can prop yourself up a little.
Tight. Okay, we'll do.
How many bands do you play in? I feel like you're in a bunch.
What a sexy question. 4 regularly. And they're all original, which is cool.
Yeah, wow,
Yeah.
a lot of music to remember. Wow.
Yeah. I'm filling in at Deep Cuts with a different band this Friday, so that'll be fun.
Nice.
Gotta
Nice.
keep it moving, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, good. Yeah. Yeah, you're hustling out there, you're working hard, and I think that's good. That's a good, depending on what band you're pitching. I mean, I guess maybe to some people it might seem like a problem because it's like you're not concentrating on one, but I kind of find that interesting that you're out there playing so much in different bands. I don't know. I was going to say that maybe that's cool saying, hey, I'm doing all these different bands and all that. And you know, you people get to other musicians, obviously get to know you. You've got a wide swath of a network there, but also I think, you know, the audiences are, you know, hey, it's doing for Rick Berlin's band, and she's over here and over there, you know, and stuff. And I think that can actually kind of add to your buzz a little bit. So to your point about how do you know grow that thing? I mean, there's no, again, if we all knew the answer to that, we'd all be doing it. But you know, it's a lot of stars have to align with growing your audience. But I think it's just getting out there, you know, being of constantly marketing your stuff. Again, maybe not too much of harassment or whatever. It's like, oh God, you know, we get so bombarded by Instagram and Facebook things and all of that again, but you know, you don't want to do it every day, but you know, just keeping out there. I think, you know, there can be a buzz among musicians, and then that sometimes begats to other to the people who follow those other musicians, you know. I think, you know, and also trying to get some gigs with some other drawing bands too. It's like, you know, depending on which band we're talking about, but if it makes sense, like, you know, a lot of other musicians, maybe, you know, somebody's drawing really well at the Sinclair or at House of Blues or whatever, and trying to pitch yourself. Not only just, I always say, no, don't just pitch to the talent buyers, pitch to the other band management of those other bands that you might be comparable and might be good to open for. That's a great way to get a bigger crowd, you know, opening up for those bands. So there's a lot of networking with other artists in addition to talent buyers.
That's cool. That's been a takeaway from this. Thank you.
All right. I guess we got, what, 10 more minutes? Wow, it's flown by. I was like, gee, am I talking enough, Jessica? I guess I am. Any other questions? Any other thoughts I can bring out? Do we have anything?
Hey, yeah. Hi, my
Michaela?
name's Michaela. Chris, I got a question for you. Yeah, when I'm pitching my band, something I really struggle with is like I want to tell the like, you know, the buyer all my awesome things about my band, all the things we've done. But then I worry that I've created an email that's too long and their eyes are just sort of glazed over. Like, do you have any kind of insight as to what the sweet spot there is? Like, how much to write before, you know, they've lost interest? Yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Great point. Well, like I said, you know, it's like if it's an intro email, whatever. I mean, obviously, the intro one is going to need a little more than, you know, any sort of follow up. But yeah, I mean, sometimes I get some that are, it's like they're giving me their life story. It's like a novel.
Right.
And so you don't want to be that, but I think, yeah, I mean, whatever you can put in like one page succinctly. What I get excited for is, so it sounds like you've been playing out and everything. So okay, so where are some of the recent gigs been? You know, is there something notable? Did you do some recording with somebody that's maybe notable that I've heard of? Have you done, you know, what are your like top 3 highlights that have gone on for you or your band the last year? You know, something like that, because I'm all about what's going on now. Sometimes I'll get some pitch and, you know, they'll say, you know, back in, I don't know, in 2011 we did blah blah blah. Well, that was a long time ago. That's nice, but what's that going to tell me now? This is all about what have you done for me lately business. And so, you know, not going back too far back, you know, what are those highlights in the last year or two, and just kind of mention that maybe in a small paragraph. and then, you know, here are some upcoming gigs, or here are some recent ones that we just did, and here are some, you know, the links. You know, if you have Linktree, that's always super helpful because it's all in one place. But if you just, you know, throw 3 or 4 things, don't, you know, somebody just sent me like, you know, 5 songs. I didn't need that. You know, I just give me a
Mhm.
Spotify, top 2, and like if there's a good YouTube video of a good quality, it's not so tinny sounding, and like I said, make sure if it's in front of people, yeah, there are actually people there. You know, if you've got that though, that's great. I do like, I admittedly, I will go to a YouTube thing before I go to Spotify, because I want to see the energy of that art, because we're all about
Oh,
live.
that's good to know.
So if you've got that,
Mhm.
I tend to, because yeah, the recording, you can control the studio, right?
Mm.
And hopefully it's an artist though that, you know, so often you hear, oh, we're better live than recording. Great, that's my kind of band. That's who I want. So those sort of things are happening. So yeah, I mean, I'd have to see what you put, but again, yeah, don't, yeah, that too little, that sweet spot, and in different people's eyes, it's going to be a little bit different. But I think if you keep it like a 2-paragraph thing with some links, you're good.
That's helpful perspective. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, there's another question in the chat. Can you see
Oh, yeah.
that?
Okay. Hey, Cody, is a video EPK the best way to present yourself in an email pitch? I think it's great. Yeah. I mean, it's, I mean, again, if it depends on how, you know, what's on the EPK. But if it's, you know, if it's something that's like, yeah, like somebody sent me an EPK not too long ago, a Nashville artist. It was like, there was snippets of songs. It wasn't like a whole song. Because I'm also, most of us aren't going to go through the whole song either. We're gonna listen, you know, it's a 3-minute song. We may be listening to a minute of it, unless it's really hooking us in. Because again, we're going through so much stuff every day. But those EPKs can be good because sometimes you're seeing some good live, if it's a high quality one, and you're seeing some different little live snippets and snippets of songs and snippets of information, particularly that info that I mentioned, like what are your highlights recently, if that's on it. Sure, that's like a one-stop shop. So if you got something ready, you know, maybe show it off to some other people. Look at it, have other musicians look at it, have some other people maybe in the business who aren't talent buyers, but do you know somebody else who was like, hey, how does this look? What do you think of this? Does this make my band or look good? You know, try to get there before you start sending out, maybe get some, because you know, some EPKs I see are just, you know, gee, you spend a lot of money and time on that, and it doesn't really, you know, jump out. You know, it's like a poster, you know, right? And again, it's a pitch, a sales pitch too. What's going to make me go wow? So that's any advice. So anyway, hopefully that helped, Cody. Tanita, any advice to get bookings as a rapper versus a band? No, I'd say, well, just uh it's really venue dependent. See where the other hip hop artists are playing. If it's and not that, you know, it has to be. Maybe some venues maybe don't program hip hop because they just don't know it. You know, sometimes the communities can be very niche and these sort of parallel universes. You know, so but I mean, you're being an attraction, being a performer. Sometimes a rapper is great because it's just a, you know, DJ or laptop guy, you know, behind him or her, and you know, they're doing the thing, and so that, yay, sound guys like easy setup, yay, it's not, you know, like a 10-piece drum kit or something, you know. So some places can work it, but yeah, no, you're being, obviously hip hop's an enormous genre in our life and has been for a long time. Same as rock and roll, same as folk music. It's just make sure it's a place that's going to be welcoming to that genre. You're very welcome, Michaela. All right. Cool. All right. I guess we have a few more minutes. Anything else I can tap into, guys? What do you all play? If you want to, I'm kind of curious. Cody, I think I recognize your name. Did you send me some stuff? That's like a rock band, I think. And Savannah, you're in 10 bands. I'm kidding. You're in a few. Anybody else want to share what you do? You don't have to. But anyway, hip hop. Okay, right on. Sure. All right. Oh, cool, Savannah. I'll check that out. Right Well, great, guys. Okay, we'll do. I
Thank you,
think that wraps it
everybody.
up, Jessica.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any additional questions and just want to connect to us. And if you are all artists in the area, please go on mosaicglow.org. You can join the Creative Ground listserv and sign up for our newsletters. And I hope to hear from you and meet y'all at some point. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
Jess.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
bye.
Thanks. Good
Have a
Thank you,
good
Chris.
night.
Bye-bye. Thank you.